Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. The Conservative Party, the party of government in the UK, with a large enough majority to be a force for good or bad in all aspects of our lives, has this last week showed without any doubt that it is flying completely blind now. Problem is, we're the passengers. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, I have long discussed how the Conservatives are actually harming themselves with their bizarre mix of greed and apathy. They are the classic notion of the destructive, stupid person. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, let me explain. So there is a reasonably famous chart which has self-interest on one axis and benefit to others on the other. There are thus 4 quadrants. There are those who are exploited. Like these are people who suffer losses for the benefit of others. These are known as like the helpless or exploited, I tend to prefer to call. There are those who can bring benefits to themselves whilst benefiting others as well. These are the strong or the intelligent or the benevolent people. You know, there are those who benefit themselves but at a cost to others. These are the bandits, or as the Irish would call them, the Tories. Comes as no surprise that this is where the Conservative Party often sits. But then there's the 4th quadrant, where they cause harm to others but also at a cost to themselves. The classic cutting off your nose to spite your face. These are the stupid people, and this is where the Conservative Party currently sits. They are causing hideous damage to our economy, to people's lives, to our international standing, to our infrastructure, to everything that makes us us. Now, that is quite normal of them. They usually benefit themselves from it. And, you know, it has long been said that nothing in the UK is working better than it was in 2010, when the Tories came back to power after a 13-year period of respite. But they are now harming themselves by these actions. Their economic damage is turning voters away. The high inflation and wage suppression means that more and more people are being plunged to poverty. The government formally have a policy of taking money off you. They're taking it off you by, if you're a public sector worker, by giving you pay cuts, real terms pay cuts. They're doing it deliberate, and they claim, see, they're not even these days claiming the reason is because they haven't got the money to pay you properly. They're actually claiming they want you to have less money because they consider it inflationary, right? They're doing the same thing with homeowners who may or may not be public sector workers, but they're still doing the same thing. They're saying we want your mortgage to go up specifically so that you don't have as much money to spend. People don't like that attitude. There are increasing numbers of people becoming suicidal is because many of these people have been plunged into poverty. They're not just having to cut back, plunged into poverty. Yet the Conservatives abuse people, thanking the Samaritans for their life-saving work. Even the previously well-off middle classes are finding themselves cutting back. These are people that are essential to the Tories in elections. So their economic vandalism is now harming themselves at the ballot box. It's become too toxic for even themselves. As I discussed earlier this week, their asylum policies not only make the situation worse, but costing us billions. Their asylum policies are keeping taxes higher than would otherwise need to be the case, whilst delivering absolutely zero benefits to those who express support for them. We're now told we must pay for water companies to do their jobs after they've run up huge debts in order to feed their shareholders massive dividends. The government are asking their voters to pay higher taxes for poorer quality services. This is not on the wish list of any voter. They're also engaging in the most destructive internal squabbling when the country wants their government to do something. Voters don't want to hear excuses. They don't want to listen to a blame game. They want action. What are you going to do? And they're getting nothing. Sunak's 5 pledges are crashing and burning, and they didn't exactly align with the public's priorities anyway. They sort of skimmed the service to the point where you'd think, you know, they sound all right to many voters, but, you know, they didn't really get at the root of their problems. But even this slight tilt towards the public interest is falling. It's absolutely failing, crashing and burning. And last Sunday, I pretty much gave up on trying to work the Tories out, because for some time I've tried to go over all for example, the pros and the cons for the Conservatives in having the general election at various times. A lot of factors to consider, and some of those factors change, so the analysis can change with each new factor that is revealed or altered. But I read a piece in the Sunday Times at the weekend, and it suggested that a significant number of Tory MPs were surprised and dismayed by the economic news the previous week. You know, when inflation was seen to be staying high at the same point and interest rates went up, and I thought, I just give up. After everything, they still don't get it. Why were they surprised? What was surprising? Yes, inflation may have come down a little, but it was already well established it was not falling as quickly as in other comparable economies. It's been described as sticky. We knew it was staying higher than it should, and we knew why. And if I knew why didn't they? After all, I am finding out from a point of interest. Their jobs depend on knowing how their party is influencing life in Britain. Their very jobs depend on it. And yet they're utterly clueless. They sounded surprised when they suffered worse than expected local election results. Why were they surprised? Hardly any senior Tories went out campaigning. They're doing the same for these by-elections now. Greg Hands is out and about. Sometimes I like to poke fun at him, but I actually have a grudging respect for him. He's at least getting out there. Who else? Who's joining him? No one's joining him. Hardly any senior Tories are out campaigning. If they lose all 3 of these by-elections next month, that will be ruinous for Rishi Sunak. Absolutely devastating for the party. And yet, what effort are they putting in? Now, it's not likely, even with their poor effort, that they'll lose all of them, but it is possible. And it's made more possible by the fact they're not campaigning. I mean, the activists are going out, don't get me wrong, and there's a few Tory MPs you wouldn't necessarily know that are not household names. Sure, fine. But the big guns, they're nowhere to be seen. And the Tories, if they lose all 3 of those by-elections, do you know what? I'm going to be reading in the Times again how surprised Tory MPs are. Why? They're not campaigning. You know, like I say, Greg Hands is out. A couple of minor Tory MPs are out. Where are the big names? Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, Penny Mordaunt all have leadership ambitions. So it's in their interest for the Conservatives to lose in order to weaken Sunak. That's why they're not out. They want the Conservatives to lose. James Cleverly, Grant Shapps, Ben Wallace, they can't be bothered, obviously. No point in sending Jeremy Hunt out there. I saw Jeremy Hunt tweeting yesterday he was out campaigning somewhere, not where the by-elections are, as far as I could tell. But that is probably because he's even less popular than Rishi Sunak. As for Sunak himself, the Prime Minister, leader of the party, where's he? He pops out for the odd photo opportunity to do his parrot impression, but where's his leadership in the by-election campaigns? What's he doing? If the Tories lose all of these seats, they had better not dare sound surprised, because they are almost willing people to vote against them. You know, there is a parallel between the events in Russia last weekend and here in the UK. People watching the coup happening in Russia and then saw it just stop for no readily apparent reason. And they thought, what's going on here? Lots of people tried to come up with convoluted explanations based on the notion there was a masterclass in 4D chess going on. But those who understand Russian politics all went, no. Don't look for cunning plans. They're all actually just idiots. Hanlon's razor, never ascribe to malice that which may be explained by incompetence. And the same is certainly true of the Conservative Party. Yes, we know it's sometimes hard because they do act maliciously, you know, but they are truly awful. It is often an easy and lazy way to disparage your political opponents. You know, they're doing this thing I disagree with. They must be idiots. But it is absolutely true in this case. Brexit demanded a leadership structure which would work tirelessly to make Brexit a success. But the concept is fundamentally nonsense. It raises trade barriers. There's no way around that. It diminishes our influence on the world stage. Again, could be no other way. But the Tories had to promote leaders who believed in Brexit, which means promoting leaders who simply didn't understand how things worked. And if they don't understand how the EU works or international trade works, then they don't understand anything. In other words, these people are idiots. People are looking at the damage which the Tories are causing to the country and the economy, and it's natural to think they're just running a final trolley dash on the nation's assets before leaving Labour in a huge mess until they return to power. And indeed, that is the impact of what they're doing, but it's not what they're thinking they're doing. The Tories are not thinking, oh, we're just going to lose and that we'll just take what we can before we lose and then go into opposition for a bit. They are genuinely afraid of losing power, because every time they lose power, they risk Labour introducing a fairer, more representative voting system. When they lose power, they lose the ability to stop that. And that would lock the Tories out of power, potentially forever. They really don't want to lose the election. So why didn't they just fix some of their damage? I've said for some time they could have put themselves in with a chance. They could have cynically stopped crushing the economy just for a year. Just for a year. tax the excessive corporate profits, boost production with more of a focus on getting people into our many vacancies, whether from the UK or if you can't get them from the UK, elsewhere. They could have done that. That would have reduced inflation. That would have reduced the need for interest rate rises. It would also have meant fair pay deals for public sector workers, meaning no strikes. It would have been a cynical move to make things better for a year, to give some people some sense of optimism. But it would have given them a chance. And if they won, they could go back to crushing us again, as they always do. But they haven't done that on this occasion. Why not? Why not just govern for 1 year in the interests of people if it means another 5 years in power? It wasn't a conscious decision not to do that. They're just too stupid to realise it was an option. They became convinced that their culture wars would tide them over while market forces came to the rescue of the economy. Because that's what the Conservatives do. Their attitude in government is, we don't do anything, the market will deal with it. But those market forces have just left people with real-term income cuts, falling public services, and now a mortgage crisis. There's no cunning plan here. Yes, the Tories are going to leave Labour with a toxic in tray, but it's not strategy, it is just stupidity. They are causing immense damage to everyone, but they're also harming themselves this time. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.